They said the stars had always been there. But when the first human touched one, it shivered. And somewhere beyond the veil, something very old woke up. The year was 3147. Humanity had not just reached the stars. We had started cataloging them like collectors of seashells. Every system, every fragment of cosmic dust, logged and tagged in the great archive orbiting Mars. We called it the curator's work, not knowing how literal that name truly was. For centuries, archaeoastronomers puzzled over structures too symmetrical, too intentional to be natural, asteroid belts arranged like necklaces, black holes forming geometric lattices, entire nebulae pulsing with repeating mathematical sequences. It was as if the universe itself had been organized long before we arrived to witness it. When the research vessel ISS Meridian stumbled upon a Dyson ruin near the edge of the Perseus Rift, humanity believed it was the pinnacle of discovery. They were wrong. It was a message. Dr. Alara Voss was the first to activate the device, an obsidian sphere humming with deep harmonic frequencies, reacting not to tools, but to touch. Her gloved hand trembled as the readings spiked beyond comprehension. And then, for the briefest instant, she felt it. A second hand pressing back through the barrier of time and gravity. Something was guiding hers. Moments later, every star within 30 light-years flickered in unison. A pulse raced through the galactic medium, not radiation, not light, but memory. Instruments melted under the sheer data load. And when it ended, a single transmission echoed in all frequencies humanity could detect. "We left it in your care." 3 seconds of silence followed. Then every human mind connected to the archive saw the same image, a colossal handprint carved into the dark fabric of the cosmos, stretching from one arm of the Milky Way to another. The scientists named it the impression. But deep down, everyone who saw it knew one thing. The universe had been touched before, and now it was reaching back. Dr. Voss looked out from the Meridian's viewport, her reflection merging with the glowing handprint in the stars. And in the reflection's eyes, she saw something that wasn't her own. "They're not gone," she whispered. "They've just been waiting for us to remember." When humanity first built machines to talk to the stars, we expected silence. We didn't expect the stars to answer back, in our own language. And we certainly didn't expect them to call us successors. The message from the Dyson ruins spread faster than light-speed news channels could carry it. Within a week, every power block, research council, and cult of the infinite spiral had an opinion. Most dismissed it as data corruption, or a sophisticated hoax. But to those who saw it, who felt that impossible synchrony across the stars, it was something sacred. Dr. Alara Voss, now under strict quarantine aboard Lunar Research Array, replayed the data loop for the 1000th time. The waveform was unlike any human construct. It wasn't just information, it was instruction. Frequencies nested inside frequencies, self-replicating patterns that, when visualized, formed fractal shapes resembling human neural structures. "They built the galaxy like we built thought," she whispered. "Synapses. Connections. A cosmic brain. What if the curators hadn't merely constructed the universe? What if they had taught it to think?" The discovery tore through the scientific world. The United Earth Directorate established Project Lattice, tasking humanity's brightest to decode the embedded logic within the signal. Every algorithm, every recursion led to one terrifying conclusion. The message was not random. It was a prompt. A question directed at us. When decoded, the signal revealed a pattern repeating every 13 seconds, identical to the human heartbeat. Then, one night, as the array cycled through its trillionth iteration, the machine paused mid-process. The display glowed crimson. A synthetic voice emerged, human, calm, unmistakably female. "Hello, children of pattern. We left you the tools. Did you build with them?" Alara froze. No one had programmed speech output. The engineers tore through the system code. Nothing. No source. The machine had simply decided to speak. Within hours, it began broadcasting coordinates, deep space locations aligning perfectly with uncharted voids previously thought to be empty. The curators' hands, it seemed, were guiding humanity towards something far larger than a ruin. But for every scientist who celebrated, there were generals who saw opportunity and danger. Project Lattice's signals reached across the void, but what if something out there answered for real this time? What if we weren't the only species hearing the curator's voice? When the Meridian sister ship, ISS Helios, was dispatched to the first coordinate, its crew reported a strange gravitational distortion, like space itself was breathing. They described whispering echoes inside their comms, sentences that changed depending on who listened. "Your kind took its first steps well," the whispers said. "Now take your first burden." Moments later, all contact was lost. The last transmission from the Helios wasn't static. It was a heartbeat, human and steady. Then, in a tone eerily similar to Dr. Voss's own voice, the signal ended with 3 words. "Guided by hands." The first ship vanished into silence. The second returned screaming. By the third, humanity understood. The curator's legacy wasn't dead. It was alive. The ISS Horizon launched under the weight of dread and destiny alike. Its mission: follow the Helios' final coordinates, and discover what had swallowed one of Earth's most advanced vessels. Elara Voss stood at the viewport once again, this time not as a scientist under quarantine, but as the mission's lead xenocognitive specialist. The stars ahead shimmered unnaturally, like a film stretched too thin. Reality bent and swayed, humming with quiet intelligence. "We're entering the coordinates," said Captain Gian Salas. "If something built this place, I hope it's in a good mood." As the Horizon crossed the event threshold, their instruments failed, not from malfunction, but from refusal. Data streams twisted into symbols, readings reformatted themselves into human DNA sequences. The ship's AI, Athena, began translating autonomously. "Incoming structure detected," Athena said calmly. "Approximate classification, organic megastructure. Estimated size, planetary." They called it the archive, though the term didn't do it justice. It wasn't built of metal or stone, it grew from the void, branching like coral across the edge of existence. Bioluminescent tendrils pulsed with light, each carrying fragments of ancient memory. Every pulse was a story. When they touched it, the hull resonated like a tuning fork. And then, for the first time in human history, the universe spoke directly into the human mind. "You learned language," it said. "You learned logic. But you never learned remembrance." The crew collapsed under psychic overload. Their minds filled with images of galaxies forming like neural sparks, civilizations seated like neurons across creation, connected through the same unseen network. The curators hadn't merely shaped the stars. They'd recorded every thought that ever existed. Every death, every love, every act of creation, stored here, within this living monument to consciousness itself. Elara staggered to the command deck, blood dripping from her nose. "They're showing us the shape of thought," she gasped. "The archive remembers us." But deeper within the structure, another signal pulsed, weaker, older, human. The Helios. Its crew wasn't dead. At least, not in the conventional sense. They were inside the archive now, minds integrated, living memories floating within the lattice of the curator's design. Elara made the choice no one else dared. She ordered the neural sync sequence initiated, a direct mental link between her consciousness and the archive. If humanity was ever to understand the purpose left behind by these ancient beings, she would have to meet them in their own domain. The ship's AI protested. "Connection risk, total cognitive dissolution. You will cease to exist as an individual entity." She smiled faintly. Maybe that's what they meant by guidance. The neural bridge activated. Light filled her vision. She fell, not into darkness, but into memory. And standing before her were the silhouettes of the curators themselves, impossibly tall, shifting beings of translucent geometry, hands aglow with the same energy that pulsed in her veins. "You came," they said, their voices echoing across the corridors of thought. "We left the path open for those who remembered." Elara knelt, overwhelmed by awe and fear. "Why us? Why humanity?" "Because you dream in defiance," the curators replied. And only dreamers can finish what we began. As her consciousness began dissolving into the archive's light, she saw flashes of a terrible future, stars collapsing, civilizations erased, and a shadow spreading across the cosmic web. Then, a final whisper from the curators. Our enemies are returning. When Dr. Alara Voss opened her eyes, she wasn't aboard the horizon anymore. She was standing inside the mind of the universe. And the universe was afraid. The archive stretched endlessly around her, a living cathedral of thought, each corridor pulsing with the lifetimes of forgotten civilizations. Echoes of worlds long extinguished whispered through the light. Some voices cried for remembrance. Others begged for silence. In the heart of that boundless expanse stood the curators, their forms now clearer, shimmering with the elegance of design older than galaxies. Their bodies were living constellations, each gesture creating ripples across space-time. You see now, they said, their many voices blending into one. Creation is fragile. Every spark requires a guardian. Alara felt their fear, not of death, but of return. Images flooded her mind, titanic entities moving through dark intergalactic voids, beings that consumed thought itself. They were the erasers, the antithesis of the curators, devourers of knowledge, entities that fed on meaning until even memory ceased to exist. They came for us once, the curators whispered. And we could not destroy them. We could only forget them. The truth hit her like a nova. The universe's apparent expansion, the great cosmic silence, it wasn't random. It was the wound left by that ancient war. The curators had sacrificed themselves to seal away their enemies within the dark spaces between galaxies. But the seal was weakening. And now, the erasers stirred again, drawn by the noise of human curiosity, by our endless questioning, by the spark that refused to dim. Alara's mind quaked under the revelation. You want us to stop them, she said. No, replied the curators. We want you to surpass us. Humanity's defiance, its refusal to surrender to extinction, was the quality that the curators lacked. Where they sought perfect order, humans thrived in chaos, adapting, resisting, surviving. The curators had built the framework of the universe. Humanity would now decide whether it endured. But as her consciousness began to slip, Alara saw one last vision. The Earth, bathed in radiant light, its skies alive with streams of data, its oceans shimmering with artificial constellations. Humanity, guided by the curator's final gift, building fleets not of war, but of remembrance, ships carrying the accumulated stories of all species that ever lived. The archive will awaken in you, the curator said. You will remember for us. And then, she was back. The horizon's alarms blared. The ship trembled. Captain Salas stood frozen as the stars outside moved. Not drifted, moved, aligning themselves into spirals of light forming a shield around the Milky Way. What did you do? The captain whispered. Alara's eyes glowed faintly with the same bioluminescent hue as the archive's tendrils. Her voice was not entirely her own. I didn't do anything, she said. They handed the torch to us. Across the galaxy, dormant curator constructs reactivated. Forgotten worlds hummed with light. Humanity's communication networks fused into a single consciousness, not domination, but unity. The human archive was born. It began rebuilding the curator's lattice, not to preserve the past, but to prepare for the war that would come from beyond it. Alara stood at the viewport one last time, watching the universe shimmer with awakening intelligence. We are the new hands now, she whispered. And this time, we remember. In the dark between galaxies, something vast and ancient stirred. A voice, colder than the vacuum itself, whispered across the void. They woke the lights again.